Stress and anxiety seem to be creeping up more and more in everyone's lives. Whether it's a deadline at work, family drama, the chaos of modern living, or even a legitimate scary or dangerous situation, all of us have felt the effects of stress within our bodies to some degree. And even though stress and anxiety fit under the umbrella of mental health, the stress response causes powerful physiological changes in nearly every major body system. You've probably heard of the fight or flight response, adrenaline rushes, and even the stress hormone cortisol. So today, we're going to cover these topics by diving into what stress does to the body in the short term, which short-term stress can actually be a good thing in many cases. But in the second part, we'll also talk about all the negative health consequences that prolonged stress can have on the human body. It's going to be a tense one, but in the best way possible. So let's jump into this anatomical and physiological awesomeness. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is the stress response? Well, picture this. Your brain detects a threat. Whether it's a looming deadline at work or some other scary situation, this will kick off the fight or flight response. This all starts in your brain, specifically in the hypothalamus, which is this small command center located within the central core of your brain that you can see right underneath my probe here on this sagittal head dissection. From there, things branch into what you could consider a fast response, a somewhat fast response, and a slower response. With the fast response, the hypothalamus activates your sympathetic nervous system, which immediately sends signals directly through nerves to key organs, such as the heart, blood vessels, the respiratory tract, your skin, and even your eyes. This will cause your heart rate to increase, your blood vessels to constrict in certain areas so that more blood can be directed or shunted to your brain and muscles. It causes your airways to dilate or open up so that you can bring in more oxygen. It activates sweat glands in the skin and even causes your pupils to dilate. And you've probably noticed some, if not all of these responses when you've been scared. And these responses occur within milliseconds, which makes sense if you want to be able to respond immediately to a dangerous situation. But at the same time, the sympathetic nervous system is initiating the somewhat fast response by also sending a signal through nerves to the adrenal medulla, which is the central portion of your adrenal gland that you can see me probing right here on this cadaver dissection. And for context, your adrenal glands sit right on top of your kidneys. And if you actually break down the term adrenal, ad means near or beside, and renal means kidney. So pretty good name for the gland that's near the kidney. But when the adrenal medulla gets stimulated by the sympathetic nervous system, this causes the adrenal medulla to release the hormones epinephrine and norepinephrine, also known as adrenaline and noradrenaline. And these hormones get released into the bloodstream. And we'll mostly focus on adrenaline rather than noradrenaline because adrenaline constitutes about 80% of the total secretion from the adrenal medulla. Adrenaline is going to bolster or strengthen some of those responses that already occurred within those first few milliseconds. And so the adrenaline will also make your heartbeat faster, increase blood pressure, divert blood flow to your brain and muscles, increase alertness, but it also triggers the release of glucose from the liver and into the bloodstream, thereby providing the body with extra energy. But why am I referring to this as the somewhat fast response? Well, first, let me give you a somewhat fast explanation of the importance of not adding any additional stress to your life by complicating your health routine. And that's where the sponsor of today's video can help, AG1. AG1 NextGen is a drinkable multivitamin that packs in gut health support, pre and probiotics, superfoods, and antioxidants all in one scoop. And like I implied, it's very simple. All I do each morning is get 8 ounces of water, add a scoop, shake it up, and deposit it into my oral cavity. This can help support my energy levels and even supports immune health, which can be quite beneficial when stress tries to knock down the many different body systems that we'll discuss later. AG1 NextGen is also backed by clinical trials that show it can fill nutrient gaps and support gut health, which has been great for my bowel regularity. And yes, I understand that may be TMI about my bowel habits. But get this, they've got new flavors now, tropical, berry, and citrus, alongside the original. The original flavor already tasted great, but I think tropical might be edging it out as my favorite now, because it's tropical and has the essence of a beach paradise swirling around the fundus of my stomach. So if you're interested in simplifying your health routine, give the new AG1 flavors a try today by going to drinkag1.com/humananatomy or scan the QR code on screen. You'll get a free welcome kit worth $76 when you subscribe, including 5 travel packs, a shaker, canister, and scoop. Thanks to AG1 for supporting the channel, and now let's get back to the stress response. So why is adrenaline released from the adrenal glands considered a somewhat fast response? Well, remember at the beginning of this, we learned that the sympathetic nervous system had direct wire connections to various organs, those direct wires being nerves. And nerves can again send signals in milliseconds, giving us that immediate fight or flight response. Now, the sympathetic nervous system also has a direct wire connection to the adrenal medulla. And so activating the adrenal medulla and telling it to release adrenaline is immediate. But here's where it gets slowed down a little bit. The adrenal medulla secretes the adrenaline into the bloodstream. So it takes about 30 to 60 seconds for that adrenaline to travel through the blood and get to those same organs that the sympathetic nervous system had direct connections to. And this is why we consider it a somewhat fast response that bolsters those effects that already happened in milliseconds. Like, think of a situation when you got scared. Maybe your friend jumped out and scared you, and you feel that immediate increase in your heart rate. Maybe you noticed you started sweating, your skin was flushed, pupils dilated, all those sympathetic or fight or flight responses. But if it was your friend that jumped out and scared you, within a second or two, you realize that you're not really in any danger. But you might notice that you still feel ramped up for minutes afterwards. That's because of the rush of adrenaline that your sympathetic nervous system told your adrenal glands to release. Your nerves can stop sending signals almost instantly once your brain knows that you're no longer in danger. But it already sent the initial signal to the adrenal medulla to release all of that adrenaline into the bloodstream when your friend first jumped out and scared you. And so even 30 seconds later, when you know you're not in danger anymore, the adrenaline reaches all those organs and keeps you ramped up for minutes afterwards until all of that circulating adrenaline gets broken down. But often true dangerous and stressful situations will last for minutes at a time or even longer, rather than just a second or two when your friend just jumps out and scares you. And so having this bolstering effect of an adrenaline rush is very useful in those longer situations. And here's something else that is ridiculously cool and kind of funny. Let's say you weren't alone when your friend jumped out and scared you, and that your friend didn't just jump out and scare you, but also scared another friend that was with you. But this third friend recently had a heart transplant. This third heart transplant friend of yours, like you, may jump and get that quick emotional scare, start sweating, have the skin get flushed, pupils dilate, but that person's heart will be just as steady as before the scare occurred, whereas your heart rate spiked immediately. And this is because during the heart transplant, the sympathetic nervous system, or those nerves from the sympathetic nervous system that connected to the original heart, were cut in order to remove that heart. And so that immediate signal can't be sent to the new heart, and therefore the heart rate remains steady. But then, as the three of you carry on reminiscing how the one friend scared the two of you, 30 to 60 seconds later, the heart transplant friend notices their heart rate starts to spike. And this is because the adrenaline released from the adrenal gland during the initial scare finally made it to the heart of the heart transplant friend, increasing that person's heart rate. I don't know why I think that's so funny, but it's just kind of cool, so I thought I needed to share it with you. But this is also true for exercise for heart transplant patients. It takes a little longer for their heart rate to increase when they initiate exercise because they have to wait for the adrenaline to reach the heart. And as one last little FYI, some heart transplant patients can get some healing of the nerves that were cut during the initial transplant procedure, but many won't get much healing at all, and so they essentially just live with this 30 to 60 second delay. But remember, I also said there was a bit of a slower response. During the initial stimulus that we first talked about, that looming deadline or that scary situation, yes, the hypothalamus activated the sympathetic nervous system, which initiated the fast and somewhat fast responses. But at the same time, the hypothalamus also activated the pituitary gland, which you can see right here below the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus here, pituitary right here. And in this scenario, the hypothalamus tells the pituitary to secrete a hormone called adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. Now, I know that name is a mouthful, but adreno refers to the adrenal gland, cortico refers to the cortex. So this hormone is going to stimulate the adrenal cortex, which is the outer portion of the adrenal gland. But the reason this lags even further behind is that unlike the sympathetic nervous system that had direct wires or nerves connecting to the adrenal medulla and the other organs that we talked about, the adrenocorticotropic hormone gets secreted into the bloodstream up here in the brain from this pituitary gland. And then it has to travel through the blood and will eventually make it into the vessels that feed the adrenal cortex. And the adrenal gland is in the abdomen, where this came from the brain up top, so it has some distance to travel. But once the ACTH, or that adrenocorticotropic hormone, gets to the adrenal cortex, it causes the adrenal cortex to secrete cortisol into the bloodstream. And now it takes even more time for that cortisol to circulate throughout the body in order to have its effects on various tissues and organs. And this takes about 3 to 5 minutes to start elevating the cortisol levels, with cortisol levels peaking at about 15 to 30 minutes. And so you can see why this is the slower part of the stress response. Now, you have likely heard of cortisol before, and cortisol is often referred to as the primary stress hormone. And in the context of the stress response, cortisol also bolsters or supplements some of the effects of adrenaline, kind of like keeping the stress response party going or allowing the body to stay on high alert after the initial adrenaline rush. And it does this by maintaining high blood sugar levels, suppressing non-essential functions like digestion and immune responses, and even tweaking your brain's mood centers. And so, as you can see, these hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, and this overall stress response are designed to prep your body for action. And in the short term, this can be very beneficial. Exercise is a short-term stress response that has incredible benefits. If you need your body to be able to spring into action because you have to escape a predator, that's very beneficial so you don't enter the digestive tract of another animal. Or, more likely in 2025, maybe you were stressed right before a presentation that you had to give at work or school, and that stress response gets you focused and primed for that presentation. All of these acute stresses can end with very positive results, but that's the key. We want it to end. You exercise for maybe an hour or two, then the stress response shuts down. You escape the predator, the stress response shuts down. You nail that presentation, the stress response shuts down. But what if it doesn't shut down? What if you continue to worry and stress about multiple things each and every day for weeks, months, and even years, and have elevated levels of these hormones circulating throughout your body? Well, then we can have multiple health problems arise. And because I don't want to stress you out any more than I already have, I'm going to cover all those negative health consequences of chronic stress in part 2 of this stress video series. So thank you so much for watching and supporting our channel, everyone. I hope you learned some useful information about the stress response today. And of course, we'll see you in that next video.